Hello and welcome to the SSCAIT report, where we look at some of the recommended StarCraft AI replays from the SSCAIT community. Today I'll be your host, Choboswaggins aka Jealous on Team Liquid, with the recent addition of Fastest Map Possible and Big Game Hunters to Schnail, the StarCraft human and AI ladder. We have been seeing more and more people playing against AI on these non-standard maps. So we will be looking at a few of those today, as well as one or two games that are more in line with our usual content. The links for both Schnail and the SSC AIT Discord can be found in the description below, so if you're interested in joining the community, we look forward to seeing you. On the screen you will see that we are indeed on Fastest Map Possible 5.8, with the human player light spawning on the bottom right as the purple Zerg. Should be noted that this most likely is not the pro gamer light, who is famous, of course, for being the high-level Terran player in both the Kespa era and nowadays. Is probably the best Terran player available. Um, and one more thing of note is that it's probably not Light, the protagonist, or I guess anti-hero from the Death Note series, or at least I hope not, because I will be critiquing their play and how they approach this matchup. Up against them, we have Krazio spawning at the 12 o'clock position as the green Terran, and AI in general are not very adapted well to these maps. I know that some authors have been putting in some work to making their AI more suited for fastest NBGH, and I believe Krazio is one of them, though I'm not sure if this replay is from before or after any changes made. Already you can see that the opening is a little bit non-standard, and we're actually sending 3 SCVs. I wonder where those are going. I'm going to slow it down. I guess maybe it's to scout all the bases. We have a bunker at the front. Meanwhile, the Zerg is going for a very standard eco-centric play, going for hatcheries first before the spawning pool, even adding a 4th hatchery already. So this hatchery here, it helps spread creep and add the potential for defensive structures on these lines, whereas this hatchery here helps with drone production and overlord production in the back. This hatchery here is placed so that there can be a sunken wall in on the front. So there's kind of a against aggressive builds, you might not be able to place the sunkens down in time, so that's why you have this backup area secured for yourself in order to create a sunken line here. Meanwhile, we do see that Krazio did build the bunker a little bit far forward. Normally you would place the bunker probably over here behind the wall so that you can take advantage of this choke point, kind of demonstrating the fact that AI not perhaps well suited for these maps quite yet. Going for double gas, interestingly enough, definitely way earlier than they can expend it, and going for an academy as well, so I'm suspecting that there might be some inefficiencies here. There's going to be a large gas bank before any of it can be spent. Also having blocked off its second command center position that is typically taken here, or sometimes people place 2 command centers with an add-on on either side. Looking at where the SCVs are, they have located the expansion of the Zerg into the choke of the base, and they are putting down additional sunken colonies, most likely going either into a very Hydra heavy or Muta heavy play. Mutalisks are often utilized in order to snipe the starting production facility, the starting town hall. This is a crucial strategic move because this is what allows for the fastest map possible to really shine, is the fact that there's 50 minerals that are stacked here, and it allows up to 50 workers to mine here with very little delay between delivering the resources back. So taking down this initial town hall is a very effective way of hampering the economy of your opponent. On top of that, because of the fact that there's so many gases, production of Mutalisks can go very, very well, but it looks like, based on the fact of what I'm seeing here, it might be Ling Hydralisk spam. Yes, indeed, we're seeing the Hydralisk den here now. Krazio's M&M should fare quite well against this, but I'm not sure if it will be able to keep up with the economy of the opponent. The opponent is already at 35 workers, using the Zerg production from multiple hatcheries in order to fuel their economy. Up to 35 workers. Meanwhile, Krazio does not yet have that second command center, so therefore won't even be able to make a scan. Another thing to note is that bio is going to be very difficult to use to push into here, especially if lurkers are made. Of course, we are seeing that factory being added for potentially some siege tank support. One of those scouting SCVs looks like it was sent to make a command center here, and I do like this move. Getting that second mineral economy might be helpful, but at the most helpful part of it would be the fact that it's going to add a second production facility of workers. Now, it should be noted that there's still no army out for the Zerg player, so this is actually a dangerous push at this juncture. With siege mode, these Sunkens can go down. Some emergency Hydralisk production is being started, but in a choke and against Marine Medic, this is going to be a difficult position to hold for the Zerg player. Zerg player playing a little bit greedy, maybe, going up to 51 workers, spending a lot of their money on those extra hatcheries before having an appropriate defensive position. Siege tanks are shelling down these sunken colonies quite quickly now, and the Hydralisks are massing up in here, but again, the production and the economy is going to allow them to produce a large amount of army, much more than Krasio is currently capable of producing from 2 barracks. Again, Krasio floating a lot of minerals, possibly demonstrating the fact that there needs to be more production facilities as an adaptation to the fastest map economy that it's currently operating on. It does have 43 workers on the map, which is more comparable to Light's 50. The hatchery at the front does go down, but the Hydralisk count is quite high already. The Marine medic composition is strong against Hydralisks because of the fact that they heal themselves so quickly and both are ranged units. However, this amount of Hydralisks and this arc is very strong. The Hydralisks are going to push in. I think those are 1-1 upgraded already. Sorry for the slow. Yes, they are indeed. And that is going to push back the Terran force. This spells trouble for Krasio, who has no real backup plan behind this. There's no mines out here to defend. There is going to be some mech positioning here, but the Vulture count isn't that great. There's still no mines again, as I mentioned before, but the Hydralisks had already expended a lot of their numbers trying to just bust out. However, going forward, we see that the worker count is very similar for both players. I think that Light might be even aware of this base over here, given the Overlord positioning here, might see those units coming in and out. Mines are finally being laid, and the push is now on for Krasio, but this army seems very vulnerable to, yes, exactly, this Hydralisk pure muscle busting. This production just isn't great enough for Krasio to maintain a heavy enough siege tank count in order to do anything against this Hydralisk count. It is going to fall back to a safe location here near its choke, but without being able to increase its siege tank count, I don't think it will be able to make many significant moves out into the middle of the map, and in fact, it should probably wait until it has a little bit more, because again, the Hydralisk production is absolutely insane for Light right now, who's floating quite a lot of money as well. Perhaps needs to invest into a couple more hatcheries. Keep in mind, for any of you who are StarCraft 2 fans who maybe have not played Brood War in a while, there is no unlimited unit selection, there's no MBS, or multiple building select, which means that fastest can be a very APM intensive style of play because of the fact that you have to macro from all these hatcheries. You can of course do control click on the larva in order to select 12 at a time, but then there's also the setting of the rallies, there's also going back to those hatcheries all the time to continue production, so it's very hard to maintain a level of production that we're seeing here from the Zerg player. AI, of course, don't have that limitation. They're able to operate at 8,000 APM, so in theory, fastest should lend itself quite nicely to AI play once the strategic development gets there from the authors, if there's enough, of course, impetus to do so. The push is going forward, and of course, this high APM is making up for a lot of the production woes that Krasio seems to be having. Krasio now floating even more minerals than the Zerg player, but the Zerg player now onto Ultralisk tech. Those triple Evo upgrades are of course going to come in the clutch here for the Zerg player, already working on 333, which is a very nice upgrade to be at. But as you can see, the APM is kind of faltering for the human player. They're not able to continue production out of all of these hatcheries, and possibly because they overmade Ultralisks. Ultralisks on their own are not that great, especially against mech. They need to be with supporting units like Hydralisks and Zerglings. The Ultralisk's main advantage is the fact that it's a heavy HP tank. It does do a fair amount of damage, but its attack rate is not as fast as that of Zerglings or Hydralisks, and therefore the combination of the two units is what is needed. But however, the Zerg has managed to stay alive for now. 66 workers to the 75 of the Terran player, and the Terran player now up to 4 bases, mining off all of these extra minerals. I really like that decision because there is a maximum amount of SCVs that you can put on here efficiently. The Zerg is pushing back. The bank is quite low, though. I would love to see more production from Krasio, though. 4 factories here is not enough. 2 more here is, of course, helpful. 1 more here, but I do think that it's still not enough. You could be operating on up to 20 factories at this point if you are the Terran player, and, of course, using more of those gases that are available to you. But using these 2 is a pretty nice move, too. The Zerg has finally managed to push back the Terran force in the middle of the map, and is now streaming in Zerglings and Hydralisks, possibly using rallies to overhear, I'm guessing. Yes, indeed, it seems that a lot of the units are moving out as soon as they pop out of the bases, and now Krazio's in big danger. This has been a fantastic back and forth from both players. It seems that when Light focuses a little bit more on the production, definitely they are capable of pushing back Krazio's inferior unit production here, and of course the 3-3 upgrades are incredibly crucial. Interestingly enough, I mean, Krazio has 3-3 of their own, or soon to have 3-3, so no slouch in the upgrade department themselves, but definitely a lot later than what we might expect in a fastest map where you can afford to get those upgrades a lot earlier. Zerg now sending streams of units, seems like every which way, trying to stop the stem. Meanwhile, science vessels flying around, irradiating key units here and there. Now, this is the position where you start to sweat a little bit as a Terran player when your siege tanks are coming out underfired immediately out of the factory. But again, the tide has been stemmed temporarily. I do like the fact that Light is attacking in waves and not just in 12 units at a time. However, there could be more being done here as well. And I like the fact that the flanking army from Krazio is coming up from behind, that there has been Marine Medic transition back into a Marine Medic transition. Repairs on the bunkers are not going to be enough against these heavily upgraded units, and now the main economy and the main mineral and town hall is under threat, and it should go down. That should stem Krazio's production capabilities very heavily. No more irradiates on these vessels, it seems. The Zerg player had sent units all over the map, and I think that victory is all but assured at this point. Production, of course, still being crazy. There's no you'd never see this in a regular match, so it is interesting to see that the addition of fastest. And this was actually done because some people were kind of like backdooring / cheating on, I guess you wouldn't call it cheating if it was in non-ladder mode, but they would take Fighting Spirit and they would name the fastest map Fighting Spirit, and then they would play on Schnell with the AI thinking that it's on Fighting Spirit, but actually it was on fastest. Tricking the Schnell program into allowing it to play fastest. But, you know, the people want what they want. Different strokes for different folks. Some people just don't like low money maps. Fastest maps have always been very popular in the very casual gaming community. Of course, there is a competitive scene as well, called SCW. I'll provide a link for that in the description below as well if that's something you're interested in. Some very high level players, high APM players do play fastest. And yeah, the Zerg Light has taken down the the AI Krazio. So let's move on to our next game. Our next game is going to be B, spawning at 12 o'clock as the Red Zerg on Big Game Hunters, and Krazio again spawning at 6 o'clock as the Orange Terran. And yeah, I think it's because Krazio enabled their AI for these maps. That's why we're seeing these Krazio replays. Again, this infers to me, I guess, that Krazio is ready and prepared and has put in some work into making their AI work on these maps. One example of how AI don't fare that well on maps like BGH is that I believe it was Purple Wave who said that their Zerg AI never, they build their second hatchery at the expansion always, whereas on Big Game Hunters that's not really necessary given the mineral count and number of patches here. You can always build your second hatchery here. It's a more defensible position, a lot easier to hold than here. Also should be noted that because of the wide chokes, a lot of the bases are more difficult to hold than others. There are certain positional imbalances. Speaking of expanding to the natural, we do see B taking that option here, and I guess Terran, I think that is a good option. There is always the risk of having this be busted. It takes some time for the creep to spread, and you need to add sunken colonies like over here, which doesn't exactly cover this entrance, at least initially. So sometimes what you may see is people going for a second hatchery here and then a third hatchery here. Behind this, we see B going for a spawning pool, very standard stuff, and Krazio is most likely going to follow a similar game plan to last game, going for the barracks and straight into a factory with no additional Zerglings. And that is kind of a ballsy move given the fact that it has not yet scattered its opponent. Early pool builds are very popular on Big Game Hunters, largely because of the fact, again, because it's harder to defend these positions. Even if you wall off as a Terran, in a lot of positions the Marines pop out at the front. Third hatchery now coming down for B at the top left, going for that economic oriented play. I don't know why there's no sound, I'm sorry about that. Definitely expected there to be sound. but unfortunately it looks like this game got bugged a little bit. Nice bunker placement here from Krasio, and expanding with a command center as well. Very ballsy, very eco-centric play. Not even adding a vulture first, which is quite interesting to me. I feel like at least one vulture would be useful for poking around, taking down stray links, so on and so forth. But either way, Krasio not yet unleashing the monster AI APM as well, still at only 180, probably just because it doesn't have any army to manage. It's going to be interesting to see what the transition is going through here. B going for a layer, still only on one gas though, so I'm suspecting that it's going to be Hydra Lurker play. Actually, no, it looks like it might be actually a Spire. Quite non-standard second gas timing, definitely a little bit late. Tells me that the player may be not too experienced with standard build orders, which, not to cast too much shade, but is quite standard for the BGH community until you get to those upper echelons of, or echelons of skill, where people who are coming, a lot of them from the 1v1 community, have mastered a lot of build order efficiencies, and have therefore started utilizing those skills and build orders on maps like BGH and being successful with them. Because in the BGH community, a lot of it still very feels, especially in public games, feels grassroots. You know, you haven't played the game in a while, you come back, you want to have some fun, you play some team games on BGH, and you kind of just, build orders, forget it. I want to make mutalisks, and I'll eventually make mutalisks. And speaking of mutalisks, we do actually have 7 mutalisks on the first production cycle. This is, of course, due to the delayed gas, but it is going to be enough to apply some pressure to Krasio, who's been on one factory production, doesn't have turrets in some key areas. This spread out turret formation does cover a lot of area, but the turrets don't cover themselves very well. A flock of 7 or now 10 mutalisks can easily take out these turrets one by one while staying outside the range of the others. That's why generally you see human players make kind of like blocks of turrets. You would make like 3 here, 3 here, and this would impede the mutalisks from going in. It would make it much more costly for them to dive into that mineral line. This mineral line is almost entirely unprotected, using only the Goliaths here, and the Goliaths were being made from only one factory for quite some time. 3 factory production now active. No +1 upgrade, notably speaking. Looking at the upgrades real quick, we actually already do have the +1. That would be the explanation. Commonly when you go for this mutalisk opening, you can sometimes go for that +1 armor as well to mitigate the damage done by the +1 mech attack upgrade, but we don't see that here. We're just seeing additional hatcheries, very macro oriented. Again, lots of mineral patches equals to lots of income, and wow, going up to 6 bases now is the Zerg player, using the Mutalist to kind of pen in the Terran. Now the Terran in this situation, generally what they want to do is build up a large enough force to take the middle and keep resupplying it, and can slowly push in and constrict the development of the Zerg's game plan. Much more of a one-time big bang push, as opposed to the Zerg's constant desire to harass and surround and expand. So in this case, though, again, Krasio heavily being limited in their production by their factory count. Floating money, both players at 58 workers, but the Zerg production machine is going to be much stronger. Look at the amount of hatcheries here. B is, let me see that army count, still only 11 mutalisks, only 10 hydralisks, so that's an army that Krasio might be able to hold on to. It is being kind of ballsy with this push. Those siege tanks are very far forward. If they get sniped, the hydralisks will be able to do a lot of work against the Goliaths. Hydralisks trade quite well against them. The Goliaths need to be careful not to walk inside that sunken range. They need to be at maximum health against the production of the Zerg. The production of the Zerg should be skyrocketing now. They were focused on economy up until this point. Krasio, though, is actually up to 70 workers already. Look at that impressive number. That is almost the ideal number you want to be in. Maybe a little bit more for BGH, but definitely the factory count is the limiting factor right now. We're seeing a bust come through. The army is going to take down Krasio's army, and this is where you do not want to be as a Terran player. You never want to lose the bulk of your army. You need to be constantly building up that mech ball. And siege tanks take so long to produce, especially off of 3 factories. Now seeing some marine production as well, but not enough barracks to support it really. And the Zerg production should be enough to handle this. Zerg now skyrocketing in APM. Maybe I should take that back, what I said earlier. They're clearly at least experienced in terms of managing multiple bases as Zerg. Although I do see some idle larvae here and there, now adding a couple of workers to help support their economy. They were lacking a little bit in the economic department, investing so heavily in those early expansions here to those bases. But the Terran again being pushed back with beautiful swarm play from the human player, very nicely done. Rallies are now being placed in the middle as well. That's confident play from the human player, and they are going to continue pushing back Krasio's low tank count. Again, losing your tank count is so devastating as a Terran player in this scenario, and Zerglings even being able to run under them is a result of the fact that there's not enough supporting units for the siege tanks here. The vultures in this number are not going to be able to defend them adequately. Tons of Hydralisks now pouring out, and Terran desperately trying to expand behind this, even though it doesn't really need to. I mean, this has enough mineral patches, I think. Funny that there's two SCVs that got trapped here. And Terran's actually managed to make somewhat of a push here. I mean, looking at the supplies, the army supply from Krasio is actually higher than the Zergs, which is kind of surprising to see. But this is the danger of Zerg. Zerg, using all of their production facilities, can transition into the counter to what is currently on the map. The Goliath count was noted to be low. The transition into Mulisk is going to whittle down this siege tank count, and then the Hydralisks can reign supreme again. The reaction from Krasio, I believe they overestimated the efficacy of Irradiate in this scenario. These are not stacked Mutalisks, so the Irradiate did not kill all of them, but it did lower the number somewhat, but not before the push was sent back to where it was coming from again, sent packing back home. But as I say that, of course, the 6,000 APM from AI is going to allow for the AI to do things that humans are not capable of. They maintain their production despite losing their army there. Oh, those mines are crucial there. They need to be careful about that. The mines do go down without too big of a splash. The Zerglings are not enough to fight against this mech force, even though there's still not that much production. Only 4 factories that I can see here, one more here and one barracks here. But the Terran, I mean, just through sheer willpower, it feels like. I certainly thought that Krasio was doomed earlier on. And B, resigning with 2,600 minerals, I'm not sure if that was the right call here, but whoa, I didn't even notice this. There was a dropship here. I wonder if it did anything. I think it dropped Mutalisks. I'm sorry, it dropped the vultures here earlier, and yes, indeed, we see them here. The dropship possibly coming back to load up again. Not enough defensive structures anywhere, really, to be honest with you, and that might have been a factor for why the human player B felt so flustered, despite the fact that I think that they were in a good position. Also, it might be due to the fact that they stopped producing those defilers that worked so well in the initial bust. But overall, definitely seeing the viability of human versus AI play on BGH, and it will be interesting to see which other bot authors decide to invest into pursuing development on these maps, because there are some map specific things that you can definitely take advantage of on BGH and fastest. That being said, let's move on to the third game that we have planned for us today. And it's going to be more standard, more like the typical fare that we see. We have monsters spawning, I'm sorry, Gujo, GG Ujo, Gujo spawning on the top left as the teal Protoss on Fighting Spirit, a human player from the non-ladder play on Schnell. And we have monster spawning in the top right as the blue Zerg. The blue Zerg monster is quite possibly the best Zerg AI currently available, so this is going to be a potentially difficult matchup for Gujo. Monster generally, at least in my mind, better known for their ZVT play, just because of the fact that they use those Dark Swarms so effectively and so aggressively, the fact that they move their lurkers so well in the mid-game, and the Mutalisk control, of course. Those are all factors that make it incredibly strong in ZVT. It'll be interesting to see how it fares in ZVP here against Gujo. Gujo going for a Forge Fast Expand. I think that this is the advisable play against AI. Sometimes in the modern PvZ you would go a Gateway Expand, and you start with Zealots in order to harass the economy of the opponent. But when your opponent has, unlimited APM, it's very hard to get those drone kills that justify that opening. Of course, Forge Fast Expand openings don't force any additional Zergling production, so that is going to lead to a stronger economy from Monster. But by the same token, Gujo doesn't have to focus on anything but their own production, allowing them to possibly have a more efficient economy. Should be noted that this wall off is very substandard. Normally you would go for a Pylon, Forge, Gateway on top. This would make it have 2 gaps for Zealots, 1 on top and 1 here next to the Pylon. The way that it's positioned here, there's actually a gap between the Forge and the Gateway and the Pylon, and the Forge and above. So possibly not the most experienced player, at least not in terms of walling. In the meantime, behind this, Monster is going for that third base. This is quite standard play nowadays. Before, you would, especially in the late 2000s, early 2010s even, you would see people trying to go for that four base style play of Zerg, but nowadays much more common to see that third being taken at the near base and going into heavy Hydralisk production off of three bases, usually off of 5 or 6 hatcheries, but we're already seeing a Hydralisk den come up off of 3 hatcheries at this moment. 20 workers, I believe you need 21 for consistent production off of 3 hatcheries, and now we are up to that 22. So maybe this will be a 3-hatch Hydra bust. The Protoss, notably, is not yet aware of the fact that this is going to be 3-hatch Hydra production. They are just getting that Stargate now and have added the Citadel as well. Those timings are pretty solid. This Corsair should go directly to the opponent's main base just to see what is going on. Noting that there are Hydralisks, you immediately want to place cannons, and that's another situation in which I would say that this gateway is suboptimal. By placing it here, you lower the amount of surface area that you have for cannons, and that's especially weak against builds like 3-hatch Hydralisk. Should be noted though that Monster did not go for the very standard approach to 3-hatch Hydralisk. They did add 2 sunken colonies, which greatly hurts their economy. They did overmake drones as well, so there's not going to be much aggressive pressure. It's not the optimized 3-hatch Hydra pressure build, so I think maybe Gujo lucked out a little bit in that regard. Adding even a spore colony here to protect their overlords. Gujo continuing that Corsair production, going to go up to 3 right now. Generally, I would say that once you see the opponent is not going for a Spire, you don't really need to go for more than 2 or 3 Corsairs. They're just a limited amount of things that you need them for. You can, of course, fly around the map and try to take down. That's painful to see. The Zergling arrives and burrows, immediately denying this third base, forcing Gujo to add cannons before they can expand, and also giving the information to Monster that there is a third base attempt here. So that is going to be something that the human player is not happy to see. Meanwhile, the human player looks to be going for that 730 Speed Zealot timing that Bisu popularized, and it's actually going to find a lot of success here, I think. No sunken colony, but no, the drones burrow, minimizing the amount of damage that can be taken. However, the third base should go down in theory. The Hydralisks are not going to be a number in order to deny this. So yeah, very nicely done. This was a build that was popularized in the 2010s, early 2010s by Bisu. It's called the Neo Bisu build, and look at that Hydralisk control. Oh, that's so devastating. I didn't think about the fact that that would be a factor here, and yeah, that makes it scary to go for this build, even if you do get the kind of damage that Gujo arrived at here. Oh, the Zergling burrowed here, and another one trying to chase down the probe. Very nicely done here, limiting the growth of Gujo. I really like this play. Gujo is going to start floating minerals soon. Should think about adding those gateways to go for an 8-gate build. 8 gates against 2 base Zergs should be a successful approach, because of the fact that not the least because of the fact that they have been prevented from expanding, but they're actually going for 5 gateways with 6 1 in the natural, and trying to take that third again, but it's going to get denied. I really like this play from Monster here, and Monster going for that other main now. The Corsairs are scouting around. Gujo doing a good job of staying informed about what the Zerg player is planning, and now sending those annoying zealots over here possibly could deny some more hatcheries here. Could be devastating, but there is a large army patrolling in the middle of the map. Now the zealot army is coming out, and there's just a lack of Templar, I feel. Some tech transition needed to happen. Possibly more Dragoons as the backbone of the army here. Possibly moving out with Templar in order to do a decisive blow against the opponent. This hatchery, is it going to go down? Oh my goodness, so close. A couple more Zealots running by should be able to do the trick, and it looks like Gujo is finally ready to move out and try to attempt this. Actually, no, looks like Gujo is more intent on securing their own third base, and I think that that is a good call given the fact that they do have a decreasing mineral count here. Let's see those splits from storms. Oh, I forgot about the splits from storms. Yeah, storms are not going to be effective in this case. The Hydralisks are going to split away from them. That's another advantage of AI. The way that I understand it works is that the storm is actually a unit that gets created. And then the Zerg knows where the unit is going to be created, like when the command is sent, as far as I know, and therefore it can split the Hydralisks away as soon as it appears. It's something within the range of frames of reaction, so it's definitely something that humans are not capable of doing, and of course the AI controls every unit individually. So the natural hatchery, it does go down here, but intelligent placement of lurkers here is going to protect that main base for now. This is almost reminiscent of something that you would see in ZVT, the way that those lurkers are placed, but it is going to be effective against the Protoss player, who I don't, yep, nope, they do have an observatory. They do have that good Protoss ball, but again, with the limited efficacy of Storm, I'm not sure if they'll be able to handle the various migrating armies of Monster. Monster now looking to go for a backstab, and this could be devastating if they take down those cannons and burrow that lurker. It could kill so many probes. The probes can't burrow like the drone cannon, while burrowing on the ramp as well, preventing the aggressive option, trying to block the ramp as well with the lurker egg. Very nicely done, and accurately, sorry, recognizing the fact that the aggressive opening has closed due to the loss of the lurker and due to the advancement of the army here. Monster runs away and runs all the way back around. Beautiful stuff here. Great decision making from this AI. Really, really annoying to see this as a human player. I see this and I just imagine myself in Gujo's position, and I want to cry. Looks like Gujo is intent on taking that main at the bottom left, looking to split the map. A split map scenario generally favors the Protoss player. That's why it is intent on seems like the Protoss player is intent on doing so. Even a 40-60 split is pretty good for Protoss. Definitely more equitable for Zerg, and we are already seeing that 40-60 coming into fruition here, especially if Monster takes this base and the middle afterwards. Mutalisks now out on the map. They are going to start harassing the workers and the mineral lines from the human player. The human player is being pulled in all directions and notably hasn't wow, that's funny. Notably hasn't had the opportunity to do anything aggressive against the AI, and this is allowing the AI to kind of grow and grow and grow until it reaches dangerous numbers. Again, the Templar are being actually picked off by the Zerglings before they can even cast a storm. Not that they could have done all that much in the first place, but yeah, the Protoss is definitely struggling right now to find a position from which they can launch an attack. Maybe that is why they're more intent on securing their half the base and going for the late game. But at the same time, when you're up against 44,000 APM, I'm not sure that that is the best option. You definitely want to hit a timing attack, I think, with Protoss. It's so key to limit the growth of the Zerg, and we have not seen that. Monster even ahead in workers now. Definitely a little bit low on the workers as Gujo particularly, but it should also be noted that they're also on only 2 base economy with both their main and their natural mined out now. Probes are being picked off on the gas as well. That's so devastating for Gujo, who is going to rely on those Archons to face against this Ling Mutalisk composition that we're seeing here. Behind this, it looks like we are building that Ultralisk Cavern, going for that late game hive play from the Zerg player. And look at this. This is classic ZVP defensive position right here. Lurkers with a spore colony, sunken colonies, making it incredibly difficult to take out this base. Oh my god, these probes are getting taken down in the expansion here too. The worker count is plummeting to 35 now. Gujo is in a world of trouble right now, especially with the fact that Storm can't really engage against these armies, and Monster is so good at picking when to engage. Ran away from the main force of the army. So a couple of zealots got pulled away. It surrounded them and took them out. Now choosing to engage, and perfectly timed almost with the Mutalisks. Not able to take down many units, but Zerglings are cheap. You can throw them around like that. And wow, the third base is gone. The human players on no economy is going to desperately try to take down this base, the one that was attacked earlier. I can't believe that hatchery stayed up, and Gujo calls it. Yeah, Gujo played well, but got outclassed in the end. You can't let the Zerg just do whatever they want in terms of expansion, but I can totally sympathize with being a lowly 150 APM player against a 52,000 APM monster who is spreading your army thin everywhere. I think that Gujo's insistence on continuously trying to defend these bases may have pushed them away from a potential 8-gate timing that could have really done well, I think, after the loss of the third base from Monster. Keep in mind that Monster stayed on 3 hatch for a long time. That delays their production. They invested a lot of early drones into static defense, and losing that third hatch limited their production, meaning that there was a definite opening for a timing attack, and I think Gujo missed the opportunity there. Moving on to our final game, we have Krazio spawning in the top right as the Green Terran, and their opponent is going to be Stardust on the bottom left as the Blue Protoss on Benzene. Our first and only AI versus AI match of this broadcast. We have had some great variety here throughout the broadcast, so I'm hoping you guys are enjoying that. And let's see what happens here. So this is well, there was a hint as to what happens here, but I want to talk about it when I spot it. So Krazio sending out that early SCV scout on Benzene. There is a very long rush distance, and ooh, it's going to be a center barracks. Interesting play here. I wonder if it's going to be BBS, and the presence of the second SCV does infer that. The probe may be able to scout this. Are they going to see that? I don't think that they would have seen that. Maybe they would have seen that SCV there, but I'm not quite sure. They are going for 2 gate, so maybe they did spot something. I know that this is a Stardust reaction to 2 gate opening and actually adding a forge now. Yeah, this is what was discussed in the Discord when this replay was recommended. It's the fact that Stardust adds cannons now when it feels that it's being rushed, which is a great defensive move, particularly against Marines. Cannons two-shot Marines and makes it very difficult to do any damage. So just holding on to the mineral line and maintaining their economic lead is a great way to stave off a barracks supply depot opening. Now, of course, the Terran behind this does have the ability to take map control and expand a little bit, but actually with the Zealots here, maybe that's not the case. The one Marine does go down, the Zealots are being forced to go back, but this cannon is going to do tremendous amount of work for defense. And it should be noted that this build was executed beautifully. They went for 2 gateways first before the forge, knowing that they'll have the time to, the Zealots will buy time for the cannon to come up. The micro from Krasio, of course, is gorgeous as well. Look at that. It's something that makes this build even more effective in AI hands than it could be in human hands potentially, but it comes down to the decision making. The cannon is going to start doing a lot of work against the Marines, but the Marines position themselves very nicely outside the range of the cannon. I believe none of them went down. Maybe one, now two went down. And now these barracks and this cybernetics core are under threat. You might have wanted to place another cannon here, or now it's definitely the time to start creeping with those cannons here. And this is reminiscent of a pro game that we saw. It was a Tempest versus Light, where Tempest held with like one Dragoon and a shield battery. Trying to remake the cybernetics core here, I think, is a mistake. It just went down there, so this is a difficult position to be in for Stardust. But what is Krasio doing behind this? Still no gas, so this is quite all in from Krasio. Krasio not looking to really leverage this position into a mid-game position. It is looking to win with pure Marines, but that's going to be difficult against 2 cannons, even if the Forge and the Cybernetics Core go down. There's actually even more gateways back here being added defensively. With enough Zealots, I think that it is possible, but I don't think 4 gateways can be adequately supported from one base economy, especially. But then again, AI might be able to do so with their efficiency. The Dragoons have come out. This is the last row of Dragoons that could have been made before the Cybernetics Core got taken down again. The Marines are pushing in. The Dragoons are glitching out a little bit, especially this one over the cannon. The Marines are doing so much damage here. And finally, that gas has been added. Another barracks is being added as well. And then a factory, it seems, is being added. So yeah, Krasio in control right now. So even though Stardust made a good decision to play defensively, I think the cannon placement was just a little bit off. It did not protect those crucial tech structures. And normally what you can do in this position is you can opt to go for a quick DT, or of course you can still make a lot of Dragoons and push back the pure Marine force. But even as a human, I would have not expected this amount of Marines to come out of here, and of course I wouldn't be able to micro against them any better than Stardust has. Should we know that Stardust economy has suffered greatly throughout all this, individual probes, excuse me, being picked off here and there, costing greatly, and limiting the gas mining capacity of Stardust as well, preventing for more creation of Dragoons. And yeah, so Krasio, I think, is going to take this one after taking down every last worker, and now Stardust doesn't even have enough to produce any more workers. And yes, that is going to be a wrapperoni. 2 Zealots are going to come out in desperation, but they should be microed away very nicely again by Krasio. So yeah, this is a devastating BBS. So even though maybe the highlight of the recommendation was the fact that Stardust reacted with a Forge cannon, I'm really impressed with this BBS micro. Like, it's incredibly difficult to hold this, but I do think that Stardust has something here. The 2 gateway opening into Forge with the timing of the cannons and the way that the Zealots were used to slow down the Marines definitely is something that I could see working. It just needs to be tweaked a little bit for it to be perfect. So that brings us to the end of today's broadcast. It is going to be a slightly shorter one because I do have some stuff planned for this later this afternoon, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys do tune in next week. Most likely Nightcat will be your host next week, so hope you guys are looking forward to that. We'll be seeing more recommended replays, and there has been a lot of them recently, so that's always great to see. We love to have a slight backlog so we can keep showing some of the most up-to-date and most interesting new content from the AI scene, whether it be through Snail or one of the AI tournaments like Basel, COG, SSCAIT, so on and so forth. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead of you. Take care, be safe, be happy, and yeah, cheers.